principles of freedom, national self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show. Can you guys hear anything? How's the sound, guys? I have a feeling there's a problem with the sound. Anybody? Can you hear? What's going on with this audio? Audio's good. Audio's good. Why is this going nuts? All right. Well, we will just run with it. I think the podcast is going to get all messed up. Okay, that's fine. How's everybody doing? I hope you're all having a great weekend. It's Sunday. I am in London. I flew into London this afternoon. It's already late here in London. Times keep shifting on me, so now we're on, I don't know, the UK went on what the US went on before, daylight savings time or whatever. I'm glad I didn't get all the timing confused. It's great to have an iPhone, and with an iPhone as a watch, basically, you never know. You never know. You never are in trouble because it adjusts completely. Okay, we got a lot of stuff to talk about today. I was in Israel, and we didn't really talk a lot in Israel. I expected to do more shows from there, but then all kind of stuff happened. Personal stuff, family stuff, work stuff, and I just couldn't do many shows. I did stream the events that I participated in live, so hopefully you got to enjoy those. And then I flew to Lisbon to a conference. I thought I'd do some shows from there, but again, like every night was a late night, and I'll talk about the conference. I'll tell you about the conference. The conference was fantastic. It was so much fun. And I want to talk a little bit about terrorism in Israel. I don't know if you saw, but there was another terrorist attack like an hour ago in Hadera, which is in the north of Israel, between Tel Aviv and Haifa. And of course, a week ago, or less than a week ago, there was the attack in Beersheba, a day after I left the city. We did an event in Beersheba, and then the day after was a terrorist attack there. And then we should also talk about the Ukraine war, about Biden's comments, about Putin. And then finally, if we have time, and if not, we'll do it next time, we should talk about China. Part of the reason to talk about China is at this conference, there were a lot of China experts, and it was fascinating. So we got into some really, really good discussions about China at the conference. So that's it. But before that, let me just say, well, first, of course, we've got the Super Chat going. I don't see Catherine here or anybody else to keep track. Jonathan, thank you for the support. Really appreciate it. I don't see Catherine or anyone else here to keep track of the support, but please use the Super Chat feature to support the show, but also to ask questions. It's fantastic. Last time the support for the show was amazing. It was a lot of money. I'm hoping today is the same. I kind of gave you a whole week off. You've been saving for a whole week, so hopefully you've got a lot of questions saved up from the week where we didn't have any shows, and you also got some extra money in the account from not using the Super Chat for a week. But that'd be great. It would be great if we could go ahead and do this and use the Super Chat, support the show. And March is going to be a significantly down month in terms of revenue because usually I do more shows. And usually there's more Super Chat revenue. So every show we do does matter. So before we get to all the other topics, I want to talk a little bit about the UK. I mean, so I landed today in London, and the first thing that was of note that suggested something was going to be different is I landed on a British Airways plane from Portugal to London. And as we're approaching landing, they came on the speakers, and they say, "Please wear your masks until you're out of the plane." It's like, what? Until I'm out of the plane? You mean I can take off my mask in the airport? Now that was new, right? For 2 years in airports, you have had to wear masks for 2 years, since March of 2020. And this is the first time at an airport. Now, other airports have kind of cheated. I haven't worn a mask. Like in Brussels, chunks of the parts of the airport I didn't wear a mask, but then when you go through security, you have to. And then when you go through passport control, you have to. But here in Heathrow, nada, no masks. As soon as you got off the plane, mask comes off. Nobody cares. Nobody's wearing a mask. The airport personnel are not wearing masks. The passport people are not wearing masks. Nobody's wearing a mask. It was like, whoa, finally a rational country that leaves it up to individuals to decide if they want to wear a mask or not. Finally, a place where there's some sanity. Well, Jennifer says COVID is only on the plane. I mean, yeah, it shows you the stupidity of the whole thing, but the airlines, British Airways, for example, in domestic flights within the UK, no masks. It's only international flights because of other countries, the stupidity of other countries. So you walk outside. I'm in the middle of Chinatown here in London at Leicester Square. This is the hotel I always stay at, the W Hotel here, and thousands of people outside, thousands, crunched together in little places, and nobody's wearing a mask, and nobody cares, and everybody's living their lives, and enough is enough. So it's so beautiful to see people living their lives, enjoying their lives, having fun, and not obsessing about this COVID stuff. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to be in London. I love this city, as you know. I'm looking forward to doing a lot of walking, which is usually what I do in London. I try to walk to all my meetings. I'm giving 6 talks before the Ayn Rand conference on the weekend. So 1 on Monday, 2 on Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, and 1 on Thursday. And dinners and lunches and everything else in between. So keeps me busy, meetings and stuff. But that's the schedule, and I'm excited about being back. I'm excited about spending the week in London, and it should be a lot of fun. So hopefully some of you are in London and coming to the Iron Man conference, and you'll have an opportunity to say hello, and we'll have an opportunity to talk and to meet one another. So it's great. This thing behind me, I maybe it's supposed to be a sea urchin, maybe it's supposed to be a porcupine. I don't know, but it's I think every single hotel room in this hotel has one of these. Usually, when you enter the room for the first time, it's on the bed. But there's a hook there, and you hang it up on the wall, and go figure the aesthetic values of people. Which reminds me, I should say on the show that I did release on YouTube my talk that I gave at Edinburgh University a week and a bit ago, and on art and why modern art, why much of modern art, not all modern art, much of our modern art, I don't consider art at all. I think it's a really good talk. I mean, I was skeptical going in, and I wasn't sure I was ready, but I got a lot of help from the student who organized the talk. He got me some great slides. We worked together in putting those slides and getting the slides and putting them into presentation. And I think the talk came out really good. And I saw the comments on the talk. Were fantastic, were really positive. A lot of people were inspired by it. And so I encourage you, if you haven't watched my talk, I loaded it up to YouTube a few days ago on art that I gave at Edinburgh University. Go check out on my channel and the You're On Lectures. in the playlist, or just look for your own lectures on art. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's actually a really good talk. So maybe I can give talks on art. I'm always fearful of going beyond the scope of my knowledge, but I know a lot of stuff. We'll get to more of that about me knowing a lot of stuff um, in a bit, because I find the experience of suddenly being the person who knows a lot of stuff interesting. Um, so where were we? Yes, the art talk. So we put up the art talk. I'm doing 3 talks at the university this week. I am. My intention is that all 3 will be videotaped. So I look forward to sharing them with you. 2 of the talks that I'm giving this week are going to be on war and capitalism. So they're going to be on war. So very current, very relevant. Thank you, Wes. That is fantastic. Wes says for $50. He says the talk on art was fantastic, very thought provoking. Excellent, good. Thank you, Wes. Thank you for the support, and thank you for the compliment. I actually think the talk was good. Usually I'm not so sure about my talks, but this one was good. So cool. All right, let's see. What do we want to talk about before we get to terrorism and war and China? I want to tell you a little bit, and I can't say too much, but I want to tell you a little bit about this conference I've attended. This is the second time I've attended it. Every time it's kind of in a different place. The first time I attended, it's called Dialogue. The first time I attended the conference, it was in Arizona. This time it was in Portugal. They do Dialogue does a conference every year in the United States, and every year in Europe, and so I've attended one in the U.S. and one in Europe. So there's 2 conferences a year, and then they do a bunch of stuff online. So I'll tell you. So I want to tell you a little bit about this. What else do I want to say? Yeah, they're very high end. I mean, the conferences are in U.S. are usually held at Ritz Carlton's. The conference here in Portugal is probably held at the nicest resort in Portugal, in Sintra, up above a little. What would it be? Northwest of Lisbon, in a beautiful, beautiful location. And it's a conference that's by invitation only. But once you get invited and you get accepted, like the first time you go, they're testing you, and you get accepted, then you're invited to all the other stuff, unless I guess you screw up, and then they kick you out. But it is a conference by invitation only. It's a conference founded by organization, and a conference founded by Peter Thiel and by Aaron Hoffman. Aaron Hoffman is a well-known serial entrepreneur in Silicon Valley who's done very, very well, and is a real, I think, thinker among the Silicon Valley crowd. And basically, the people invited to this conference are primarily successful entrepreneurs, primarily from Silicon Valley, but also from all over the United States, particularly today, Austin, Nashville, all over. Then, of course, successful people from New York. They might be tech entrepreneurs, but they might also be financiers. But then most of them were tech entrepreneurs from New York this time. In Arizona, I think there were more finance guys. And then they invite a sprinkling of intellectuals, university professors, famous authors, famous. I mean, I met a very well-known, and I can't tell you who's there because they don't want you talking about it. So I'm going to talk about it in generalities, but they don't want you talking about who said what and who's there and who participated and who stuff like that. So I'm going to avoid doing that. But there were senior people from the U.S. military, senior people from the U.S. military intelligence. There were economists, some of the most famous economists in the country, good economists, bad economists. There were, again, columnists, very famous columnists, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, left, right, center. Nobody as radical as me, but all over the map in terms of political views, philosophical views. life views. But the thing that unites everybody at this conference is that everybody there is super off the chart successful. So first, it's just kind of cool and an honor for me to be considered among this group, right? So one of the guys I met at this conference, really cool, very successful businessman from Saudi Arabia. We hung out quite a bit and talked. A Saudi, right? And they were Germans, two German members of parliament, one current, one former, two Israeli former members of parliament, both from the Labour Party, so both from the left. Again, massive, huge spectrum of people. Some politicians, former governor of one of the states. I was going to say the state, but I changed my mind. And then again, most of the people there are super rich and super successful in business, and most of them are really young. So the other thing that I feel when I go there is I feel old, like I'm among the small group of old people, relatively speaking, at this conference. But for me, the fact that there's some recognition that I belong in that group, I don't know who invited me. I don't know. Somebody sponsored me. I have no idea who it is, but now I'm a regular. So what happens at the conference is they have a bunch of topics. You meet the four breakouts, the four sessions over 2 days, and you choose what breakout sessions you want to be in, and you basically sit around. There's a moderator, and you talk about the topic that you selected, that was selected for this breakout session, and you get to talk about different things. So from what was some of the topics we talked about? China. One session was about China. One session was about inflation. I can't remember what the other two sessions were, but anyway, you get to sit around and talk, and some of them are political, some of them are more philosophical, some of them are personal. Like there were sessions on divorce that were very popular. There was a session on sex, I guess, that I didn't attend. There were all kinds of sessions on all kinds of things, but you get to talk. There's no lectures. It's just talk. And then what I think is particularly unique is all the dinners and lunches orchestrated. So the pre-assigned seating. So they try to mix it up in terms of the kind of people that are sitting at a table. And then there are topics to be discussed, and there's a moderator. So for introverts, this is great. I hard to believe it, I'm actually an introvert. I don't like just going up to people in a cocktail party or figuring out what table I want to sit at and with who. This way, it's a no-brainer. You sit where you're told. And then there's a topic of conversation. The group doesn't have to figure it out. There's a topic of conversation that's determined by the moderator. He gets a card in advance. But, you can deviate from that. You can come up with your own topics. They don't care. The point is to get an interesting conversation going. And so I learn a lot at these conferences. What I particularly learn is how and what people that clearly disagree with me are thinking. And again, what I find fascinating about it is hear people who are super successful. They've done stuff in life. They've achieved things in life. And yet they disagree with me. So something's wrong here. How can they dare to disagree with me but that's what's interesting. And a big part of my enjoyment of these conferences is figuring out what they know and what they don't know, where the confusions are, and what it is that they get and what they don't get, and why we disagree, and can I communicate better? Maybe on some things I'm wrong. So, really fascinating conversations with, and the other thing is, there's no canceling. There's no politically correctness at these conferences. You say whatever you think. You engage. People are super, super, super open to have conversations about anything. People are not going to poo-poo you and disregard you or treat you in an unfriendly way because they disagree with you. It is it's a very, very unique experience. It's not like universities where people are trying to bash each other over the head. So it's people have respect for one another, and they've earned the respect in a sense because they're super successful. Um, well, I'm sure there's a line, but there's always a line, right? If there was a communist, a fascist, or Nazi in the room, there would be a line. But within the scope of my ideas being pretty radical and some progressives in the room, people say what they want to say. And people challenge climate change, and people challenge, the trans agenda, and people challenge. Some people will compliment you, Putin, and will pro Putin. I mean, you get a whole variety, but people are open, they're listening, and they are discussing, and their minds are open to the debate and to the discussion. And for me, it's fun. And this time I was thinking about why in particular I like this, because I actually enjoy this conference more than I enjoy objectives conferences, and more than I enjoy finance conferences, more than I enjoy many other conferences, particularly objective or libertarian conferences and so on. What is it about this conference that I enjoy? I think that, first of all, objectivist conferences, when I go to an objectivist conference, I have to be on, right? I have to be on in a different way. Like, people are looking to me for answers. I'm the speaker. I'm the celebrity, if you will. People asking me questions. It's constantly, I'm delivering, right? I am delivering content in one way or another, even informally when people are chatting. I am the celebrity, in quotes. And here I'm a nobody. I'm a nobody in the sense that I'm somebody, but I'm just like everybody else. There's nothing special about me. So I enjoy that. I enjoy being just one of the guys, one of the people at the conference. But the second thing I really felt this time in particular, and I'm sharing this with you. I hope you care. I don't know if you care, but sometimes you guys seem to care about, like, what I think about these things. What I enjoyed about this one was that in every single session, I seemed to say things that caused people to really think, and caused people to come up to me afterwards and say, that was really interesting what you said. I hadn't thought about it that way. I need to think about it. Hey, where do I read your books, or what did I see? So here were really successful people, not Ayn Rand fans, not people who are primed to support my views, not people who already love me or hate me or are interested in one way or another, but people who don't know who I am, don't care who I am in a sense, but found what I said, the product of my intellect, if you will, or by man's intellect, or the way I communicate, whatever, interesting, and who are not primed for that. Because I'm not going over there and I'm not talking fine, and I'm not bashing them over the head with objectivism, right? I'm talking about the issues at hand, and I'm presenting ideas, information, and they find it interesting. And of course, these are gateways for hopefully them discovering more ideas. But I like that I'm being taken seriously by people who are not part of our universe, and who are super successful, off the chart successful. So yesterday, I don't know, this member of parliament who's been a minister in the German government said something about healthcare, socialized healthcare, something, and I challenged him, and I said, in a friendly way, I said, no, that's not it, and I suggested an alternative, and he was like, no, you're going to call me a socialist, but it was all friendly. And later we talked about it, and another woman, and a very prominent woman within these circles and in Silicon Valley, I challenged her assumptions about welfare and about the need to support the poor and buy them insurance and things like that. And she was like, oh, let's talk about this later. This is interesting. So you don't get the kind of dismissal if you disagree with people as you do in many other places. So it was fantastic. And then you get to sit, and I'm not going to say what people said, but you get to sit in rooms with really, really, really smart people. So we were in a room talking about China, and one of the people in the room well, I can't, I shouldn't say more. Anyway, somebody who has unbelievable knowledge about American intelligence with regard to China and inside, right, in the military. So just being in a room and having her, in this case it was a woman, having her insights, and obviously she didn't tell us anything classified, but that whatever she's saying about China is. And then I challenged her, and I said, I don't, I disagreed with her on a few things, and it was cool because later on she said, oh, well, those were really good challenges, those were really good questions, da, da, da. And we got to talk about it. So anyway, I really love these conferences. I expect I'll come at least once a year to them. To the one in Europe. I like the one in Europe more. It's less Silicon Valley-ish. It's more globalist. It's more diversified in terms of people from different countries. I mean, where else am I going to have long conversations with a guy and be super friendly with a guy from, some rich prince probably from Saudi Arabia? Where else is that going to happen? So it was a blast. I really enjoyed it, and of course, it was in a beautiful place. And they take us out to these dinners and these castles, and about 200 people. Fabulous. I'm looking forward to coming again. To coming again in a year. And it's not that I'm there to change anybody's minds. It's not that I'm there to convert anybody. I mean, I'm there to learn and to enjoy the exchange, and if I can prod some people, if I can poke some people, if I can get them thinking in a different way, I think that's cool. Trump would not be invited to this, I don't think. Somebody asked me if Trump was there. All right, let's see. So that was the conference. I'm hoping other objectivists, successful objectivists, get invited to this conference in the future as well. That'll be good. All right, let's see. Yeah, I don't know if you saw this, but about an hour ago, maybe an hour and a half ago, it didn't even make the news. I saw the live videos on Twitter. Two Arabs, Israeli Arabs, probably. It looks like they from a village within Israel. Went into the city of Hadera and started shooting people in the street. Now, they were not very good at what they did. They were not very effective. They didn't choose the right place, I guess, if they wanted to inflict mass casualties. And they only in quotes, killed 2 people and injured, it looks like 4 or 6. It's hard to tell because the data was coming as it was happening. And they were shot by the police. I don't know if you saw the video. I mean, I don't know if you saw the video. The video was brutal of the attack in Beersheba a few days ago, where a guy basically came onto the street with this. He basically crashed his car into another car. He ran over a bicyclist and crashed into another car, killed the bicyclist. But then he took out a knife, a big knife, like a butcher's knife, and he went around stabbing people. And you can see the video of him jumping on the back of a woman and stabbing her in the chest. I mean, and killing her. It's just horrific. The horror of it, and you can see it happening. Imagine, I mean, try to put yourself in the shoes of this woman and what it must have felt like, So, in Beersheba, he killed 4 by stabbing them. In Beersheba, it was civilians, armed civilians. One was a bus driver, another civilian who, the bus driver basically shot him, challenged him, tried to get him to drop the knife, didn't quite know he had already killed people. He just saw this maniac running around with a knife. And I mean, just I don't know, something about killing somebody with a knife that is just horrific. And, ultimately shot the terrorist as he lunged to him with a knife. So with his handgun, and then a second civilian shot him again to make sure he was dead. This one was also an Israeli Arab, a Bedouin from the south, who had actually sat in Israeli jail because of his membership in one of these Islamist terrorist organizations. I mean, these are the kind of terrorist attacks that are particularly impossible to stop or very, very difficult to stop. These are just individuals deciding to go kill some people. In the case of the Beersheba one, it ends up that they arrested one of his brothers because one of his brothers at least knew about it happening. I could have warned the authorities, but didn't. But it's really hard. I don't know yet what's going on with the two guys who today shot and killed two people. Again, they had semi-automatic weapons. They could have killed a lot more people, and they didn't. So, in a sense, we're lucky, or we're lucky they're stupid, or we're lucky they're inefficient or ineffective, because they clearly wanted to kill more people, but just didn't get to the right place. So, just imagine living amongst people who at any moment will take out a knife and stab you, or who at any moment, and you don't know, right? It's not like they're all like that. 99.9% of them would, or more, 9.999% of them wouldn't do it. But you don't know who will. The attack in Beersheba happened not that far from where I was giving a talk the night before. So not far from where we had been the night before. It was at a gas station. They just jumped on the people at the attendants, and then some of the people gassing up their cars. And just imagine just standing, pumping your gas, and somebody jumping on your back and stabbing you. Truly horrific. And the real sad thing is that these are Israeli Arabs. These are Arabs that live within Israel. These are Arabs that have full rights as Israelis. They vote. They have property rights. They have contract rights. I'm not saying there's no discrimination in Israel. I'm not saying some of the laws are not bad in Israel. Certainly some of them are. But overall, they have better lives in Israel than they do in any Arab country. They're freer in Israel than any Arab country. And yet, they have been radicalized primarily by Islamists, primarily by religion, to hate Israel and to be willing to commit suicide. Remember, these people are all committing suicide. They all know they're going to die. They all know they're not going to come back from these attacks. And yet they do them. And the power of religion, the power of, not caring about your own life, dismissing your own life, willing to just give your own life away for what? Is truly powerful, and it's, I think at the end it's a testament to the fact that Israel is so weak that it won't stand up to them, that it won't destroy their leadership, that it keeps treating Hamas and Hezbollah with kid gloves, and it is truly it's truly horror that they feel emboldened by Israel's weakness. They think they can win. The whole job of the Israeli military and the Israeli government, from a perspective of dealing with the Arabs, is to make it unequivocal that no matter what they do, they will not win. That Israel will win, will defeat its enemy. That's the only way you can stop this kind of activity. It's like, as I said for years and years, nobody believed me, including people in the chat. Nobody believed me. I said, the way to stop terrorism in Europe is to defeat ISIS. If you defeat ISIS, if you crush ISIS, if you eliminate ISIS, terrorism in Europe would stop. And for the most part, it has. And the reason it has is people don't want to die for a dying cause. People don't want to die for a cause they know is lost. If you crush Iran, much of the Islamist agenda is gone. Much of the Islamist agenda is defeated thoroughly if you crush Iran. And in the case of Israel, if you crush Hamas, if you crush Hezbollah, if you tell the Palestinian Authority they will never, ever, ever, ever win, no matter what they do, and you're willing to do anything to defend yourself, then they will stop. But Israel won't do that, hasn't done that. The world won't let it to some extent, or the world penalizes Israel when it engages in any kind of actions to suggest that, and therefore it just doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. FG, thank you for the $50 contribution. Really appreciate that. Bishchuk is easy to say. Thank you for the support. Andy and Ryan, it's great to see you here, and thanks for being YBS fans. Thank you. All of you can join the Yaron Brook fandom and be members of the Yaron Brook Show. by going below and pressing the join button and subscribing. It's not a lot of money. It's like $5.99, and you get to support the show. And we will. I know we haven't done it yet, but we will be releasing special videos that just for you, for those of you who are members. So it really is. You live in Israel with that kind of fear and threat. It has a real cost. It's non-trivial, the cost of living like that. Now Alejandro says, who is better, Netanyahu or this new government? They're both weak. I mean, I don't know that in the case of security issues, I don't know if you can tell who's better. The problem with the Netanyahu government, again, I don't support or not support governments based on at the margin if they're a little bit better or a little bit worse. On policy, Trump is better than Biden, but that's not what matters. In the case of Netanyahu had to lose. Netanyahu was letting power go to his head. He stopped being a servant of the people. He started treating people as his servants. He was becoming more and more authoritarian. He was becoming more and more obsessed with power. And he needed to lose. I'm very happy that he lost. This government is ridiculous. But they're doing a few good things. They've got some economic liberalization that's passed, which is surprising because some socialist parties on it. From a national defense perspective, they're doing what's necessary in Syria, not more, not less than what Netanyahu did in Syria. And they haven't had a war with Hamas or Hezbollah yet. We'll see how they did with Hamas a little bit. And they basically did what Netanyahu would have done. There was no difference. Remember that the people, actually, the prime minister of the Israeli government today, Naftali Bennett, is actually on many of these issues, particularly on dealing with the Arabs and the Palestinians. He's on the right of Netanyahu. He's a critic that Netanyahu is too weak. The problem is that he's in a coalition with the left, so it's quite a balancing act. But in many regards, there's no left when it comes to foreign policy. Israelis are pretty united in terms of the fact that Israel has to defend itself, and it can't let these things happen. Wow, we've got Josh is watching the show from Somalia. Wow, that is cool. Nice to meet you, Josh. It's great to have you on. Thank you for joining us. I don't know what you can't find. What video can't you find? What's that? Oh, Putin's stadium rally. Yeah. He says, is Netanyahu coming back? Hard to tell if he's coming back. I mean, it depends on what happens with these corruption trial that is happening right now. There were rumors that he was in negotiation to cut a deal with the prosecutors, and part of the deal would be that they wouldn't send him to jail. In exchange, he would retire from politics. I don't know if that'll happen. I don't know if he's coming back politically, even if he doesn't go to jail. It's hard to tell what will happen in this trial. I'm certainly not an expert on this particular issue. I haven't followed what he's accused of and what's happening. But the fact that he might have been corrupt at the margin is not surprising. Again, he was obsessed with power, and I think it did something to him. Paul Allen says he's been listening to me since the Leonard Peacock podcast days. Thank you, Paul. That's fantastic. That's a long time. 2013, I think I started doing the Leonard Peacock podcast. That's a long time. And I've been doing this podcast, my podcast, since 2015. So thank you guys for sticking around and being supportive. Just on a super chat issue, we're at about $175. We still got, I don't know, 325, 425 to go. So ask questions. I'm not seeing a lot of questions. $20 questions would be ideal. If those of you can afford to do $50 or $100, that would be greatly appreciated, so that we can try to get to $500-600 this month. I haven't done a Iran's Rules for Life show, so I might do one from London one of these days. We'll see. Problem is, every single evening I've got to talk, so I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to do these shows. I might do them early in the day, but then none of you will be either awake or you'll be at work or whatever. So I don't know. I might just do them for the Europeans. We'll see. So as I said, Israel is these terrorist attacks are horrific, and Israel better find a solution to this and better make it clear to these nutcases. And many of them look crazy. So I'm sure there's also mental health issues going on with these suicide bombers. But think about an ideology that requires you to commit suicide for a losing ideology. Truly horrific. On the other hand, as I think I've said in past shows, Israel is truly amazing. It's one of the most optimistic places on planet Earth. People are positive about the future. People are engaged. People are passionate. And I think the best indication of that, and I know this is controversial, but I think the best indication of that is people have kids. Israel is the only country in the Western world where the secular population has children at above replacement, right? So if you include religious, Israel is way above replacement, and if you include the Arabs, way above replacement and way above anybody in the Western world. But what's interesting about Israel is the Jews have more babies than Arabs, but even secular Jews have more babies than Arabs and have more babies than anybody else in the Western world. And I think children, as a societal phenomenon, not as an individual perspective, is an indication of how positively or negatively a culture views the future. What the vibe is, what's the atmosphere, what's the general attitude towards the future. Because if you think the world's going to end, if you take Greta seriously, well, you're not going to have kids. So anyway, it is a super exciting country. If you haven't never been, you should try visit. It's a super exciting country. It's got amazing history. It's got amazing present. The skyscrapers in Tel Aviv are stunning. I mean, there were no skyscrapers when I lived there, and now there are many and more going up and vibrant, and wealth being created in huge quantities. And just an amazing place, which is not something I thought I would say about Israel, certainly when I left it. It's fantastic. All right, let's see. What else did I want to say about Israel? I think we'll stop there. Oh, we did do 2 events. They're up online. You can watch them. I do recommend the Beersheba event, the first Free Market Roadshow event. There was an excellent talk kind of in the middle of the event by an Israeli scientist that takes on the issue of climate change and quotes Alex Epstein as part of it. You can tell the Alex influence on him, but he's a real scientist, a heavyweight in science in Israel, and he gives one of the best talks on climate change I've seen anyway. So I highly recommend that. Also, not only have I posted the art lecture that I did at Edinburgh University, which I highly recommend to everybody watch. It's different than other stuff that I've done, and I think it came out really, really, really good. And the comments about it suggest that it was really good. But also, I recommend that you watch my talk in France. The talk I gave to the French student. This was a university I think I told you about. Really, really smart kids from all over the world. Super bright. These are going to be the leaders of the future. These are going to be the entrepreneurs of the future. But they're studying politics. So these are likely going to be the politicians of the future. And watch it. In particular, watch the Q&A. The Q&A was, I think, fabulous. They asked hard questions. They kept coming back. They were passionate. They were interested. They were engaged. I think you'll like my answers, and so I think that's a fabulous video. That's from Reims, France, and it was really good. So thank you. Ryan asks, "Hi, Yaron. I love following your lectures when you travel. My perception is you're always welcome in Europe. is there less demand in the U.S.? Are you being invited to any colleges in the U.S. this year? I am, but yeah, there's less. I don't know why, but maybe we make more of an effort in Europe. I don't know. But there's definitely less demand in the US. I mean, when I put out a tweet or just an announcement, hey, I'm going to be in Europe, anybody want me to come and talk? And I contacted a few organizations, I got a flood, and I couldn't do all the talks that they wanted me to do this trip. This trip just got too crowded, so I had to postpone or say no to some things. We're not getting the same response in the U.S. The U.S. I tweet that I'm available, and I also Luca. Yes, there is an online video of the event. It's the Free Market Roadshow under you're on lectures, I think, or one of my videos. Just look at my videos. Free Market Roadshow from Be'er Sheva. It's probably about 40 to 50 minutes in. 40 to 50 minutes in, you'll find it. If I have, we'll see. Maybe somebody who knows where the video is can post a link to it. I mean, there's definitely less demand. I mean, I'm speaking at a Federalist Society in a few weeks in Connecticut. I'm speaking to a group of businessmen in Dallas. But that's it. That's it for the spring. It's pathetic. I'll be speaking to more universities this trip in Europe than I'll speak in the US all year, I think. And I find the students here more engaging, more interested. A larger and larger percentage of the OAC, the Objectives Academic Center, are Europeans and Israelis, and fewer are Americans. And that's not because we're not reaching out to Americans, it's because they're less interested. So something about American culture that is deteriorating maybe faster. I think it's our educational system. But I don't get a lot of traction. I mean, also in America they have lots of options, right? So they have lots of people they can invite. Lots of people they can invite. Libertarians and people like that. Lots of people they can invite that are libertarians. So they have a ton of libertarian speakers they can invite in the U.S. And most of these groups tend to be. But the nice thing about the one in France, they were non-ideological and they didn't agree with me. Like maybe there was one or two students who came into the talk kind of agreeing with libertarian or free market ideas. That's the beauty of it. They're much more open as a thing to do. Now, given that, I did do the debate with Richard Wolff at the University of Pennsylvania last semester. I did do the big event in Texas with Yoram Chazoni. So it's not that I don't do things at the university campuses, but there is less interest. If you guys have an idea on how we do that, if you guys are on campuses in America and find ways to invite me, please do. If your children are attending college or if there's any context you have within the American universities to get me invited, that would be fantastic. But I do better in Europe. And I'm coming back to Europe in late April, early May, and I've got a whole schedule of places, and hopefully I'll be speaking at Oxford and a bunch of other places. So it is interesting. It is interesting. All right. What else did I want to talk about? We talked about Israel. We talked about talks in Europe. Okay. Yeah, so let me remind you again, we're at what, 180, 190, maybe we're 200. So we've got 400 to go. So that's a lot. Not a lot of Super Chat questions so far. But so it would be great if you use this, if you use the Super Chat to support the show and to ask questions. And I promise to get to all the questions asked. I'm not doing them in order because I'm doing them based on the topic. All right, quick update on Ukraine and Russia. I still haven't seen. Anyway, I'm shocked every day by how accurate my predictions were about the war in Ukraine on day one, right? I predicted a lot of this stuff on day one. But I've learned a few things since then that I find interesting. So at the conference, you talk to people, you learn stuff. One of the things I learned, which I did not realize, I knew Ukraine had natural gas, but it turns out that Ukraine has more natural gas than Russia, and Ukraine indeed has the second largest natural gas reserves in Europe. They have the only country that has more natural gas reserves, known reserves, than Ukraine is Norway. And guess where all the natural gas reserves are? All the natural gas fields are in eastern Ukraine and in southern Ukraine. Those are the areas that the Russians seem to be adamant about taking. And they're willing to kill as many people as necessary, as we're seeing in the cities that they are destroying, just flattening in Ukraine. And I think that I'm coming to the conclusion that part of, at least a significant part of Putin's motivation, Putin's agenda, is to capture those gas fields in southern Ukraine. Most of the reserves that have been untapped so far are actually in the Black Sea. They're off the coast of Mariupol and off the coast of Crimea. And these, of course, are the area where we're seeing some of the heaviest fighting and where the Russians are slowly insisting on advancing in spite of taking heavy casualties. I think he's committed to, in a sense, making sure that Ukraine is not a competitor to Russia when it comes to gas, that he has a close to monopoly over the gas supplies to Europe, although there are alternatives, but these are the easiest ones. Imagine if Ukraine had started pumping gas to Germany, and Ukraine has the pipeline infrastructure to take it from their gas fields and pump to Germany. And one of the great tragic things about Ukraine, its corrupt government, its unfree establishment, is that these gas fields were not exploited. That Ukraine is just sitting on these reserves and not exploiting them. And the reason they're not exploiting them is, to do it, they would have to get foreign companies to come in because of the corruption and because of the nationalism, the Ukrainian nationalism. They have not encouraged foreign countries to come in. I mean, years ago, I spoke to members of parliament in the Ukrainian parliaments. I spoke to people in the finance committee and the economics. They wanted to know, how do we make Ukraine rich? And what I told them is that they have to overcome their nationalism. They have to overcome their queasiness. And they have to sell all of Ukraine. They just have to sell it to everybody, to anybody. They have to bring in foreign investment. They have to get oil companies to come and drill for the gas and pipe the gas out. They have to get companies to build plants there. They have to get big farming conglomerates to come and farm in Ukraine. That the way to really change the game in Ukraine, the way to get Ukraine rich, is to adopt a free market, but to adopt openness to the flow of capital, to people actually buying into Ukraine and selling their assets. And they were very resistant, but it's Ukraine. And I said, who cares? In America, in most of America, there's no, the oil is not the states. The oil is the people who find it. The oil is the people who own the land. It's unfortunate in the United States that 75% of all the land west of the Mississippi is owned by the state, by either federal or state governments. But in principle, the United States is built on the notion and the idea that, that private property is private. And that's the solution to Ukraine's problems. And of course, they didn't listen to me, and now look where they are. Listen to me. I know you guys did. It's interesting that over the last couple of weeks, Russia has made very little progress, even in the south, even in the east. It now looks like they will take their first major city, which is Mariupol. I'm mispronouncing that, but you know which city I'm talking about, in the southeast of the country. It's an important strategic city. It links kind of the Russian satellites in the eastern part of Ukraine with Crimea, which is clearly an important strategic goal of the Russians. But they made no progress in Kiev. Indeed, a couple of days ago, the high command of the Russian military had a press conference in which they stated that their goals were to really just solidify kind of the autonomy of the states, or the annexation of the states in the east to Russia, that they had no ambitions to occupy Ukraine, completely different than what their message was in the first few days of the war. So they're scaling down the war because they're being defeated. It's stunning, the incompetence of the Russian army. It's stunning how pathetic their weapon systems are. And they've resorted, because they're so bad at warfare, they resorted basically to flattening cities. They took a city of 500,000 people and they're flattening it. They're destroying it block by block. I don't think they're going to try to do that to Kiev. I think they're going to leave Kiev. I think they're going to try to either split the country in half and take the whole east of it, or they, we'll see. And of course, we'll see if the Ukrainians let them. The Ukrainians are counterattacking in a number of regions. They're pushing the Russians back. We'll see how successful that is. A lot of this depends on the ability of the Ukrainians to get sophisticated weapon systems that they know how to use. They can't get new ones, but they know how to use from the West. And even weapon systems, Russian weapon systems that they know how to use from places like Bulgaria and Poland and Slovakia that have these weapon systems, S-300, ground-to-air missiles, and ideally they'd get some MiG-29s. But this is a major disaster for Putin. It's a major catastrophe for the Russian people. It's a major catastrophe for the Russian economy. The economy is clearly squeezed. People are talking about GDP dropping by 25%. Imagine a country where 25% of the wealth is wiped out. Wiped out. People become 25% poorer. Russia is already a pretty poor country, already a very aging, very old country, aging population, no dynamism, and it is becoming worse, if you will, with the sanctions and with the casualties of war. Young people are dying, right? They're killing off young. They're killing off the future entrepreneurs. They're killing off the future workers. They're killing off the people who will build Russia in the future. They're being killed in the fields of Ukraine for what? For a brutal dictator's crazy dream about a Russian empire built on oil and gas. I mean, Putin is a materialist in the sense that his whole focus since he came to power in the early 2000s has been on real assets, right? Oil and gas and gold and, real things. When wealth creation is a product of the human mind, so instead of investing in technology, instead of encouraging entrepreneurship, instead of encouraging, smart Russian programmers to build and to create and be innovative, instead he focused on dead industries, on the past, on things that have limited growth potential. And he's turned this country into a poor country. And, he didn't allow it to become rich. But he's been a complete failure as the president of the country. Complete failure. And now we're seeing the consequence of that, because this war was a massive strategic mistake. Massive strategic mistake. There's more I can say about Zelensky. He did his tour around the world, talking to parliaments all over the world and trying to guilt them into supporting him. I don't know how well that is working. Certainly it backfired on him and Israel. But Israel did come out this week in support of Ukraine and against Russia. It had hesitated to do so. But I think probably the most interesting development, aside from what's happening on the ground, which is horrific for the Ukrainian civilians, and horrific in a good way, I guess, for the Russian military, is that China is, making significant noises about distancing itself from Russia. it is not clear that China wants to embrace kind of an axis of authoritarian regimes that are poor. Does China really want to isolate itself and be a big trading party with a loser like Russia at the expense of, potentially at the expense of, trading with the United States and trading with Western Europe? Does China really want to support a nuclear power at its north with somebody as unpredictable as Putin at its helm? But I think the main issue for China is China needs trade with Europe. It needs trade with the U.S. It really can't afford to piss us off. Maybe it has plans to one day be in a position to be able to afford to piss us off. But it can't today. And I think that you've seen a couple of things happen in China over the last week that are positive. And I know it's hard for many of you to hear anything positive about China. Two things. One is the fact that they distance themselves from Russia and from Putin. It looks like they're not supplying them with weapons. But also, was it a big Chinese company said they would not buy oil and gas from Russia. Right. And so I thought that was really interesting because they don't want to be sanctioned by the West. So they're not, even though, of course, the wimpiest thing about this war is the fact that Germany, every single day, Germany is sending $500 million to Russia for natural gas. $1 billion every 2 days. I mean, just extrapolate how many billions of dollars are flowing to Russia to support the war effort because the Germans shut down their nuclear power plants, because the Germans didn't help exploit other natural resources like natural gas that exists in Central Europe, that the Germans consciously created a situation where they're completely dependent on Russian natural gas. $500 million a day. Who buys oil and gas from Russia? Right now, the Indians are buying it. India is buying huge amounts, but India is buying it on its terms. It's buying it at a discount, and they'll only pay for it once it arrives in ports in India. Usually you pay for gas when you sign a contract and delivery is later. The Indians will only pay once the oil is actually delivered to ports in India. So India is buying gas and oil from the Russians. So that's the first good thing that happened in China. Came out of China. The second good thing about China, and I don't know if you saw this, I don't know if the US media covered this, but there was a major announcement, I think it was about a week ago, from China saying, we're going to back off from our assault, they didn't phrase it this way, on high-tech companies. Okay, we've achieved what we wanted. We're going to back off the market. We're going to let these companies alone. We're going to stop attacking them, controlling them, destroying their markets, and we're going to leave the market alone for a little bit, for now. Right? Who knows until when? And that's a result of the fact that since the invasion. The Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Chinese stock market, the Russian stock market has been devastated, close to zero. But the Chinese market has seen the largest drops in equity valuations, since 2008. The Chinese market has been devastated. And the West hasn't. I mean, stocks are down in the US, but not devastated, not big, maybe 5-10%. But in China, they've been crushed. And the Chinese government is like, it's interesting. China has got this, they want power and they want control, and they call themselves the Communist Party. But they want to get rich. And they want their people to get rich. They don't want poor people in China. And they want to build the most powerful military in the world. And they need money for that. And they're far, far inferior to the United States. And they have these conflicting agendas: power, crushing anybody who is competitive. For example, what's his name? The billionaires. But also, they know they need billionaires. They know they need the incentives. They know they need the minds. They know they need the entrepreneurship. And they're still struggling with the right kind of balance. And it'll be interesting to see. Xi is again, supposedly dictator for life. The Chinese Communist Party is having their big meeting, I think, later this year. It'll be interesting to see if Xi really has all the power there. And if they're not, maybe younger, more pro-growth forces within the Chinese Party that will try to limit the kind of control he imposes on the Chinese economy, knowing that it will destroy growth. So the fact that the Chinese want to become rich is a break on how bad they become, both in terms of foreign policy and in terms of domestic policy. So, all right, there's more I have to say about China, but maybe we'll leave that for a future episode. As I said, we had a session at this conference about China that was really interesting. One of my contributions to the session, which I think resonated with people, not with everybody, was some people, and it took them a while, but as I explained it, seemed to sink in, is that authoritarian regimes do not innovate. Authoritarian regimes do not become rich. And that the more authoritarian China becomes, the less innovation, the less progress, the less it will become rich, the less it is a threat militarily. And just like Russia is not a threat militarily, because it's authoritarian. So in the long run, authoritarianism is no match for freedom. All right, so we're at about $300. Our target is 300 more, so 600. That's my challenge to you, is to get there. You can use it. You can support the show by asking a question, or you can just support the show by contributing some money. Okay, we have a lot of watchers watching live. It would be great if you gave it a thumbs up if you like the show. It helps the algorithms. It helps the show grow. It helps get in front of new people. The more likes you give a show, the more interactions you have with the video. Sharing it, liking it, joining, becoming a member, all of these things support the algorithm and get it more prominent in the YouTube black hole algorithm. So please do all that. Comments are great. Chats are great. Write a comment. Anything you do that interacts with the video helps the video go up, helps the channel become more visible, helps us. Right now we've got some videos that are doing very, very well. The 1-minute videos. We're again at very high levels of new subscribers. By the way, if you're not a subscriber, please become a subscriber. We really value you as a subscriber, and you'll be notified when I go live and all of that good stuff. So please become a subscriber as well. All right, we have got a bunch of questions. Rafael says, "Yuan, was super nice to meet you over lunch in Lisbon. I look forward to seeing you here more often. Hope you enjoy the view." Yeah, I mean, these guys. It was a small group of objectivists, of people interested in objectivism in Lisbon. Took me out to lunch in this beautiful place in Lisbon, overlooking the Atlantic Ocean and parts of the city, and it was gorgeous and it was beautiful, and the food was good, and the view was great, and it was a little chilly, but overall the weather was nice, and it's just a beautiful. I mean, Lisbon is a beautiful city. I'm enjoying every time I come to Lisbon. I enjoy it, and I look forward to coming more often. So it was great to meet local objectivists. It was great to meet Rafael and the friends that he brought, and it was a lot of fun. Let's see. Landon says, "Fun fact, Ukraine has captured more Russian tanks than they've lost to combat since the start of the war." That's pretty nuts. But that's, as I told you, the T-72 tank is not a good tank. They're getting stuck. They're getting stuck in the mud. Soldiers see other tanks being destroyed, so they jump out and they run away rather than continuing within the tank. Tanks are claustrophobic, scary things. So a lot of tanks are being captured. The Ukrainians are using tractors to take the tanks away. But I told you the T-72 sucked. Nobody believed me. I told you the Russian army sucked big time. And they do. Putin sucks. They all suck. Right? Authoritarian thugs. All right. Okay. How do we judge people who still, after the energy crisis and war, support criminalizing, taxing fossil fuels and nuclear power in Europe while subsidizing inadequate unreliables, like Elon Musk and his supporters? As detached from reality, as rationalizers, as as people who don't think problems through. Now, Elon Musk has said that we need more fossil fuels, not less, and he has talked about nuclear, and he's been a promoter of nuclear. So I don't think you're characterizing Elon Musk exactly right. But yeah, he's blinded by this notion of alternative energy and solar and all this stuff, which is complete nonsense, but he's blinded by it. So how immoral, is he evading? Is he immoral? What exactly does all that? It's hard to tell. I mean, clearly he's evading some. Clearly there's some immorality there. He's not an evil guy. I think overall he's a good guy. Is he, whoops, my light just fell. Is he bad on this stuff? Absolutely. Let's see if we can get this. All right. I don't know if that light is good or not good, but that's what we got. All right, Finn Harper says, what would China have to do to have FU money, metaphorically speaking, applied to a country bringing about to do what they want without worry about backlash, besides initiating force? I mean, this is the catch-22, if you will. To get super rich, you have to trade. Trade makes you interconnected with others who you might not particularly like. Trade makes you, dependent is the wrong word, but trade, you have to trade with somebody. So for China to get rich, it has to trade with the United States and Europe and Africa and South America. It can't just trade with poor countries. It can't just trade with Russia and India. There's not enough demand there for there to be enough wealth created in China. So the only way China can get FU money is by trading. But trading makes it very difficult to go to war with the people you're trading with. It makes you immediately susceptible to those people deciding not to trade with you. And this is true of the United States. This is the whole idea of, we're delinking. We're going to be self-sufficient. Well, yeah, you can be self-sufficient and poor. You cannot be self-sufficient and rich. And that's what people don't understand. So if you want to be rich, you got to be willing to trade. And including trading across borders and trading with all kinds of people all over the world. And that integration is what I think preserves peace, or part of what preserves peace. Ayn Rand talks about this in The Roots of War. And if you think about Russia, one of the reasons Russia is poor, and one of the reasons Russia is violent, is willing to engage in initiation of force, is willing to engage in war, is because it's not a trading nation. Yes, it sells oil and gas, but it doesn't produce stuff. It doesn't innovate. And it's not dependent on these external markets. It's dependent on natural resources. And it's a completely different mentality. and it stays poor because you cannot become rich off of natural resources. No country ever has. So it's really interesting that if the Chinese ambition is to get rich and not have poverty in China and all that, it has to stay open. It has to commit itself to trade. It doesn't, even with 1.2 billion people as a population, even though that's going to start shrinking. You cannot be successful unless you trade with other people. You cannot be successful unless you're innovative. Innovation and trade open up societies. They're forces against authoritarianism. And I think that's why I think it's worth being optimistic about these things, is that I don't think that China is going to dominate America, because the only way it can become rich is becoming free, and if it becomes free, we don't care how big it is. And if it's unfree, then it can't get that big. So I don't know how much it would have to have FU money. It's far away from that. If you think about how much the United States spends on military, it's 4 or 5 times more than the Chinese do. We have a significantly better military. We have better technology. We have better innovation. China is not yet a match for the United States militarily, and the only way it can get there is by becoming more free. And if it becomes more free, I don't fear it. The China I fear is a China that's isolationist and not integrated into the world economy, but that China's not rich. So it's kind of pretty cool how reality works, right? Reality rewards virtue. And if you're going to engage in vice, i.e. socialism, authoritarianism, you're not going to get rich. You're not going to get rich. All right. Justin, thank you. Really appreciate that. Adam asks, many Ukrainians are ethnic Russians, Baptist, atheists, etc., who escaped from Russia's established Russian Orthodox Church. Is freedom of religion, philosophy, sense of life, a stronger motive for fighting than nationalism? It might be. There is no. I don't know that there's persecution of non-Russian Orthodox church members. If there's explicit persecution, there might be persecution, but I don't know how strong it is. So, it's. I think that the people on the ground fighting, including ethnic Russians, who are fighting the Russian forces, like in Mariupol, most of the people fighting the Russian forces, house to house, block to block, are Russian ethnically Russian. They speak Russian. They're fighting for their homes. They're fighting for, the world that they've created. I don't know if they could identify it as freedom of religion. They're fighting against a monster. They're fighting against somebody who is bombing their neighborhoods. And they care more about their neighborhood. They care more about the lives of their children. They care more about their property. They care more about their neighbors than I think they care about an abstraction called freedom of religion or an abstraction called Ukraine or any of these things. So I'm not sure it's nationalism or they're fighting for a particular abstract view of freedom. They're fighting for their lives. Somebody is trying to kill them. That's how they see it. And they don't want to be ruled. Freedom of religion is part of that, but they do not want to be ruled. They look at Putin and they see an authoritarian, and as bad as the government is in Ukraine, and it's not a good government, but as bad as it is in Ukraine, the Russian government's 1,000 times worse, and they know that. And they don't want it. And that's one of the revelations in this war, is the extent to which ethnic Russians in Ukraine are fighting the Russians. Do not want Putin, do not want this invasion. All right. Thank you, Adam. Let's see. All right, we've got a few $20 questions. Shazbot says, oh, that's a sea urchin behind me. We talked about that. Let's see, who else has a $20 question? Wes says, an art question. Why do people insist on saying art can't be objective? I know art is tough, but an art seems to be one of the few subjects that people don't want a definition for. Like it would ruin the mystique or something. Yeah, I mean, but that's the consequence of, I think, of so-called modern art. That modern art, if you say that art is something in particular, then people look at you like you're crazy because they've been taught, modern artists have proclaimed, modern intellectuals have told them that art cannot be defined, because if it could be defined, then some things that they consider art would be excluded. But this is part of our intellectual elites' attempts to destroy our conceptual ability. They don't like concepts at all. They don't like definitions of anything. Art more than anything. And common people now look at that and say, well, I don't know what art is. They put a urinal next to a Michelangelo. They tell me both are art. I don't know what art is. I guess art is whatever people think it is. And they've just bought into that. And that's exactly what the modern intellectuals want. They want to destroy the concept of art. And they've succeeded. So common people have the same category folder. They have Michelangelo's David and just some bunch of metal, put together. If both of those are art, then art means nothing, and art is not important, and they don't need to do art. So they reject the whole concept, which makes complete sense if those are the alternatives presented to them. Okay, let's see, $20 questions. Ignacio, taking advantage that you are in Europe these days, how do you see Europe in the short run? Europe has really come together around Ukraine up to a point, right? They're still buying natural gas from Russia. But for the most part, I think the fact that Germany is investing in its military is fantastic news for Europe, and I think for the future of Western civilization. I think that the Europeans are taking their national defense more seriously is a good thing. I think the way they responded to refugees and new immigrants is a good thing. I think a lot of these countries are suddenly going to get an inflow of new people who are going to work, and that is going to be very, very positive for their economies. So I don't know. I mean, there's obviously a lot of climate change pressure. I mean, a lot of European countries are committing suicide. I think there's some awakening to that, to their dependency on natural gas from Russia. There's some rethinking about where they should get energy from, and maybe they shouldn't put it all into the windmill basket. Maybe they should think about LNG and maybe a pipeline of gas from Israel or from Egypt or from somewhere that is not Russia. Maybe build some nuclear power plants like the French are doing, and I think Scandinavians are doing. So I think Europe's going through a real rethinking, and I think part of that is very, very positive because they're on a bad path, and I think the rethinking has the potential to put them on a better path. It's not that it's going to be a good path. It's still philosophically corrupt, but there's a sense in which this war is waking people up. It's the one positive that this war has is it seems to be waking certain people up to the dangers of and to the wrongness of the path that they're on. Oh, I have to tell you this story. I mean, a lot of you will be upset at me, but this is a reality. I mean, you could really see how Brits who travel are pissed off at Brexit by the fact that they now have to stand in line with the rest of us, non-Europeans, in order to fly to England or from England into Europe. I've said this before on this show, but I find it so wonderful, amazing, that I can get in a car in Lisbon and I can drive to Madrid, and from Madrid I can drive to Paris. From there I can go to Brussels, Amsterdam, Denmark. I can go to Poland. I can go to Germany. I can go to Austria, Italy. No border checks. Nobody asks for passport. Nobody asks you anything. You just drive. Now that is a beautiful thing. And the English, the Brits, used to be able to come to Europe and just walk right through, in a sense. Now, they have to stand in lines. And the lines are brutal. And it's given them a sense of separation. It's given them it suddenly has reduced their freedom of movement. And people value freedom of movement. And you can tell in the lines the Brits mumbling about how they're disappointed in Brexit. And as I said when Brexit happened, Brexit will be good if the Brits do the right thing with it, and it'll be bad if they don't do the right thing. And clearly, they've not done the right thing with it. So Brexit on net right now is a clear negative for the United Kingdom. We'll see if they improve what they do with it, but so far it's been a disaster. I mean, even the hotels I stay at are short on staff because one of the things Brexit did is it cut down the labor market, because it used to be that people from Poland, people in Portugal, Spain could come here and work in London. No problem. Now they can't. They have to get a visa, work visa, restrictions on immigration. Just horrible. It's just horrible and stupid. Unbelievably stupid. Yeah, I know the UK was never part of the Schengen, but it was still, they still went through the same passport checks. There's a big difference in passport checks. They used to go through the passport check of the EU. Now they go through the passport check with Americans and others. Brits used to go right through those with the electronic stuff, and they did not stand in line with the rest of us, with Americans and others. It was a different line. It was the European line, even though they weren't part of the Schengen. But there's also customs now. Shipping is very expensive. It's very, very difficult for Brits to engage with the rest of Europe. And this didn't have to be this way. The UK could have done Brexit and then lower tariffs unilaterally. They could have opened themselves up to imports from they could have eliminated custom barriers. They could have done a lot of things. But they chose not to do it. They chose not to do it. And instead, they've taken all the worst elements of the UK, of the EU, all the regulations, the green agenda, and they've embraced them. And they've added tariffs, and they've added immigration controls, none of which is good. All right. Let's see. Jennifer asks, do you think personality test categories are overly simplistic, even collectivist, because individuals are too complex to be lumped into such categories? Yeah, I do. I mean, I think they're useful in a sense of indicating, suggesting a direction, but I think it's very dangerous to, and even then, they're on a spectrum, so you never just all, it's never kind of just this or that. It's a spectrum. Yeah, but I don't think you should take too seriously a personality test results. They're useful for employment. I don't think they're unuseful. Again, because they give you a sense of somebody in some categories, and I think certain recruiters who are trained in how to use these tests and evaluate them, and for particular jobs, they're probably useful for them. Thanks is, I don't know how much 50 RON is, but I do see your question. I just don't know how much it is, and I'm doing the $20 questions first. I thought that 50 RON is not $20, but if it is, then I'm happy to jump to that one. But let me finish the $20 questions, and then we will get to yours as well. Michael asks, you say people won't tolerate high crime and lawlessness for sustained periods of time, but look at South Africa, robbery, kidnapping on normal parts of life, certain levels of nihilism appear to be sustainable. Well, South Africa is not the United States. I've never said that people won't, anywhere in the world, they won't tolerate it. I mean, they tolerate it in Russia in terms of the government's crime against its own people. They tolerate it in South Africa in terms of street crime. They've always tolerated in South Africa. They've tolerated during apartheid. They've tolerated post-apartheid. And they won't do the things necessary to reduce crime. But in America, they will demand political change. Now, whether that political change will result in lower crime is a different question, because lowering crime is a difficult problem. But what they rebel against is defunding the police, particularly when they see a connection between defunding the police and rising crime rates. So you're seeing that I mean, this is a great example. The district attorney in San Francisco, who is the one who invented this thing about we don't prosecute shoplifters unless you steal more than $700, we don't care, that kind of stuff. He's being recalled now, and he's going to be voted out in San Francisco, in wacky, leftist, crazy San Francisco. I talked to one of the people at the conference that was at in Lisbon. I talked to one of the people who's behind some of these recalls in San Francisco, and he's saying, yeah, even some people who consider themselves progressives realize how destructive and damaging their policies have been and are voting to recall these people. 75% of the people voted to recall the school board members in San Francisco. I mean, I don't think you quite appreciate how much of a rebellion that is from the left against the wacky left. And that's going to be nationwide. And it's why the Republicans are going to win in the midterms. It's not because of Trump, not because the Republicans are so good, not because people love Republicans. It's because people in the center of the political map are sick and tired of defund the police, wacky left, and they associate it with rising crime and with inflation. All right, let's see. Liam, if intellectual property is a natural right, then it could not be limited in duration. Well, there is no such thing as natural rights. Natural rights are never limited in duration. Our physical property rights never expire, but intellectual property might. But what do you mean by natural rights? I mean, the whole conception of natural rights is wrong, because it's based on the idea that God or nature imposes these rights on us somehow. They're in us, or they're part of us, and they're not. Rights are a moral political concept. It's an idea. And it's an idea that is contextual, like every other principle. It's contextual. It's how you apply it, and you apply it differently to different types of property. You don't apply it equally to property, and you can you can unbundle rights. You can dismantle rights and sell rights to certain aspects of something and not the full thing, even with property. So Ayn Rand was not a natural rights philosopher. She didn't believe in natural rights. Rights are a concept that protects man's mind against force. They're a concept that allows man in a social environment, they're an idea, they're a principle that allows man in a social setting the freedom to use his mind in pursuit of his values. And how you apply that, how do you apply this principle, is interesting, right? It's different. It's going to be different for intellectual property and for physical property, because of the two things have different characteristics, different requirements in terms of his survival. Hopper Campbell, how come in the arena of, and by the way, even with physical property, let's say I own property somewhere, and I abandon it in a sense that I have a deed on it, but I never use it, I don't take care of it, I don't keep up with it, I ignore it, I lose that property over time. People can take it. There is such a thing as abandoned property. So the fact that you own something physically, but if you don't invest in it, in a sense, if there's no attention paid to it, then it stops being yours. You don't have a right to it anymore. You lose that right. Rights are only to actions. Just having the property is not an action. Even having the property means you have to engage in some activities to preserve it, to keep it yours. That's what you have a right to do. And if you don't engage in those activities to keep it yours, it's not going to be yours. Hopper asks, this is a good question, How come in the arena of competitive ideas, large portions of collectivist thoughts were able to outcompete individualism? It can't just be altruism. No, it's also mysticism. So it's a combination of mysticism and altruism, and it can just be mysticism and altruism. It's Plato. It's Christianity, more than anything. It's Christianity, which is fundamentally collectivist. So it's the very fact that all of the that every single philosophy out there from since Aristotle, with the exception of Aristotle, maybe with the exception of one or two other figures in history, has been collectivist because mysticism demands that and altruism demands it, and neither one of those are being challenged. Right? So, it's I'm not going to now go into a whole thing about collectivism and its connection to mysticism, but I think that connection, and if not, we'll do a whole show on it. But mysticism necessarily leads to collectivism, and necessarily leads to altruism. And if you combine mysticism with altruism, which all mystics do, that is the formula against individualism. And one of the things we're going to have to do is overcome religion. And religion not only in its among religious people, but also among the secularists who have adopted the morality of religion even when they're secular. It's hard to overstate how destructive Christianity is to the cause of individualism, even in countries that are nominally not Christian, like Europe, where most people are secular, but they're still Christian in their morality, in their outlook on life, in much of their outlook on life. All right, let's see. I think we're out of $20 questions. Oh, there is one. Two. I missed these. How did I miss these? Sorry, guys. Dave says, why is he thinks he's smarter than everyone else an insult or an indicator of narcissism? What if someone is smarter than everybody else and you should listen to them? Ayn Rand was a good example of that. Yeah, absolutely. But it's a question of, I think the negative side of arrogance. I'm going to show you all off. I'm going to make you all look stupid. I'm going to make you all look dumb, which some people do exhibit. And I think as at the core of he's smarter than everybody else is kind of a derogatory statement. Not, nobody says about Einstein he's smarter than everybody else. Everybody knows he's smarter than everybody else. It's the person who's not smarter than everybody else, but thinks he is, and presents himself he is, and puts everybody else down, that people use that statement against. And I think they should use different words, but I think it's a real thing. Colt writes, Clavin criticized Candace the other day in his North Carolina moderate Republican Senate candidate is going after Trump, endorsed candidate for his pro-Russia comments. Is this another good sign? Will the new right be discredited? I actually think, and I said this early on in the Ukraine thing, I actually think Ukraine might be a real turning point for the Republican Party, for Republicans, where they see what this new right is all about. The new right itself is kind of splintered, but I think there is a recognition of the fact that there is this new right, pro-Putin new right, a right that respects Putin, that they should disassociate with. And I think some people in the Republican Party are starting to do that. By the way, one of the people at this conference that I spent quite a bit of time talking to, funnily enough, you'll find this entertaining, is one of the leaders of the evangelical movement in the United States, and somebody who served who had strong ties to the Trump administration. And he was really interested to talk about Trump, to talk about the administration, to talk about why evangelicals supported Trump, talk about what evangelicals want for the next nominee of the Republican Party for president, whether they'll support Trump or not. It was a fascinating discussion. Again, part of some of the things, and he's an interesting guy, right? And we had an extensive conversation. He knows who I am. He knows I'm a atheist. He knows Ayn Rand. He knows all this stuff, and here he is, and we're sitting and chatting in a friendly way. And I was intrigued. I tried to get as much information as I could because I think it would really help us. So that was great. Okay. I think that's all. So yeah, I think I'm happy to see Klavan criticize Candace. That's great. And I didn't quite understand who else criticized who else, but to the extent that they're criticizing the new right, it's a good thing. All right, I'm getting tired. I need to go to bed. It's almost midnight. All right, Ram says, Dr. Book, I got a job offer, stockbroker, and my first job ever, but the company is a subsidiary of a government company. It makes profits, no special advantage of a private player. It is a model to join. Yes, I think it's model to join. You can't avoid, in our mixed economy, any connection to the government. Would you not go work for Tesla? Yeah, of course you would. And are investment banks or banks generally in the United States free of government intervention? No. They're all, in a sense, controlled by the government. You can't avoid it. So yes, congratulations on the job. Do really, really well. Excel, particularly early, in your first job. Do the best job you can. Really invest everything you have in this first job, because that'll open massive amounts of doors. And if you discover that this is a company you don't want to work for, that it is being corrupted by government and so on, if you do really, really well in this job, you'll be able to find many others. So for young people out there, that first job, kill it. I mean, kill it is why am I using kill it? Do a great job at it. I hate terms like kill it. All right. Frank says, it's the 50th anniversary of The Godfather. Don Barzini says, quote, after all, we're not communists. Do gangsters benefit by living in a capitalist country? Yeah, I mean, benefit to the extent that gangsters benefit from anything. They're scumbags and they suffer the consequence of being scumbags. But they benefit in the sense that thieves have something to steal in a capitalist country. There's nothing to steal in a socialist country, other than if you're a thief in the government and then you're stealing whatever production happens. So, yeah, I didn't realize it was 50th anniversary. I hear there's a new cut of The Godfather. I'm kind of curious. But my light keeps falling. It's driving me nuts. I'm looking forward to watching it. I'm not sure where I can get it. I think on one of the services it is available. Maybe HBO Plus, HBO, something. All right. Dank Stank says, idea for future show, Nick Fuentes and Destiny debated Ukraine. Can you watch it and comment? Fuentes seemed to have won, even though Destiny is a good debater himself. The debate became viral. No, I won't. I mean, I'm interested in debates like that, but I will not show video of Nick Fuentes. I consider Nick Fuentes below despicable. I mean, he's exactly the kind of character that I do not want to endorse in any way, not want to engage in any way. He is scum. He's exactly the kind of person that so many people of the right are enamored with. He's got a certain charisma. He's very articulate. But he is the worst of the worst on the right. And I don't want to sanction anything he says or anything he does. I mean, if you can find somebody who wants to defend Russia and you want me to comment on, fine, but not Nick Fuentes. Marcin. Hello, Dr. Brooke. Thank you for a life-changing show. This show is life-changing? Wow, cool. How profitable do you think it is for Russia to attack another country? How probable is it? I think close to zero. I think Russia's being humiliated. I think their military is being crushed. It's being devastated. I don't think they have the energy, the money, the resources. I don't think the military has the people or the manpower or the equipment to attack anybody. So unless he decides to use nukes, there's just nothing they can do. And even if he uses nukes, he'd be wiped out. I mean, if this is what the Ukrainians are doing to the Russians, NATO would wipe him out. So I have zero concern. This could still escalate into a nuclear war, but that's in a sense more likely than Putin sending tanks across the Polish border or across the Slovak border or something like that, Moldovan border. I just don't think that would happen. He's been too humiliated so far to keep going. I mean, he has to do something with Ukraine. He has to come to some conclusion with Ukraine, but not beyond that. Not for a long time. Michael says, how long until Ayn Rand is respected or at least discussed seriously in philosophy departments the way Kant is? I don't know. 20, 30 years. It's decades. Maybe longer. Mr. Muffin, how would the military be funded and would it be as powerful as they are now if the U.S. was as capitalist as you would want it to be? It would be funded primarily, I think, through voluntary contributions. We would all write checks to the government to fund the military and police and much of the judiciary. So I think it would be funded voluntarily. I think there are a variety of different ways in which you can control for free riders, for example, post lists of all the people who paid and how much they paid. And if somebody is not paying into the system, their neighbors would socially isolate them. We'd have sanctions, but not from the government, but from private individuals. Companies might not want to deal with you if you don't pay something towards national defense. So all kinds of ways in which you can ostracize people and get them to do it, even if they, or at least if those who want a free ride off the system. I think almost everybody would, because it's in their self-interest. And remember, this is a capitalist world is a world in which much of us, right, would are a capitalist world in which our ideas are one, and therefore you have benevolent, positive, future-looking, rational people who'd be happy to fund the military. Would it be more? Would it be as powerful as it is today? It would be more powerful, significantly more powerful. The U.S. military is filled with rot, with inefficiencies, with corruption, a lot of corruption, with bad decision making, with political stuff, with political waste, with political departments, with all kinds of restrictions and diversity training and all kinds of nonsense. The U.S. military might be smaller, but it would be 100 times more lethal and devastating and designed and built for the mission. And there'd be no waste. So it would be a much more powerful military than we have today. Much more powerful. Technology would be better and we'd be 1,000,000 times richer. So we could afford 1,000,000 times more. Thanks. The best way, if you want me to deal with those arguments, make a list of them. Make a list of the Fuentes arguments in favor of Putin, and I will answer them. So rather than me showing video of Nick Fuentes, just you make a list of them and come here and, for a couple of bucks each, make each argument for $2, and I will address each one of them in terms of the arguments pro-Putin. I'm not afraid of the arguments. I just don't want to give Fuentes a stage. Alejandro, what about their theft of intellectual property? Whose theft of intellectual property? China's? I'll talk about theft of intellectual property by China when I do my China show. I'm not pro-China. I think the theft of intellectual property is a problem. Some of it is a problem. But I'd rather talk about that when we do a whole show about China, because it's a complex topic. Michael asks, I didn't realize we have 100 objectivist intellectuals. I thought there were only a few dozen. Need to put themselves out there more. I agree, they do. Enric, are supersonic missiles developed in Russia and tech achieved associated Chinese government like space missions one-offs or actual challenges to the United States? Look, they are one-offs, but what does a supersonic missile give you? It's harder to shoot down, but it's hard to shoot down ballistic missiles anyway, right? And Russia has 6,000 of them. If you launch 6,000 missiles, you can't shoot them all down. And if the United States launches its missiles, they're not going to be. Nobody's going to shoot them down. Not maybe they'll shoot 50% of them down on a good day. 50% of the nukes getting through will destroy you. So it's a marginal. It's at the margin. By the way, the United States had a supersonic missile program that was shut down by stupid bureaucrats. Again, an example of I think we'd have a much stronger military. Mr. McMuffin says, in lectures during Q&A, please use mics. I can only use mics if the facility provides them and if the students are equipped with the right kind of equipment so the mic feeds into the camera. You guys have no clue how difficult it is to get students to record these things, to record them and to have the equipment and to get everything going. And it's very, very difficult. Some schools are well equipped, some schools are not equipped, some student groups are really good at organizing these things, some are not. I can't do it. I can't carry with me all the recording equipment that is necessary to record these talks and build mics. I'm not going to invest in that and carry them all through Europe as it is. My luggage is stacked, and I carry this equipment to be able to do this show. It's the venue where I do the talks has to provide that, and if they provide it, great. And if they don't provide it, and you can't hear the exact, you guys you're getting access to so much. Just a few years ago, we would all give lectures all over the world, and none of them were recorded. They never went up. There's no YouTube. There's nothing. Now you get all these riches. So some of it doesn't sound great. There's so much. Then skip the ones that don't sound great. But I try. Believe me, I try to get them all to do it well. But it's hard. Michael says, how can you say our senses come before science when scientific instruments are able to pick up things our raw senses cannot, like cancer tumors? Can they? I mean, at the end of the day, how do you know it's a cancer tumor? What the scientific instruments do is they enlarge it. They provide you with a picture, but how do you register what's on the picture? Your senses. And how does, even if you program AI to identify the cancer, first of all, you're going to verify it with your senses. And secondly, it was information you received from your senses that allowed you to program the AI to find the thing. So your senses are always primary in these things. None of this is possible without your senses. Everything, every scientific instrument is built on the basis of what we learn from our senses. And it's there to provide our senses with more data. Everything, even when we read a chart, how we see the chart? Through our senses. Landon Wall says, I just watched The Death of Stalin and loved it. It reminded me how impotent these evil a-holes are. Have you seen it? Thoughts? I saw it. Yeah, I don't think I've seen it. It's one of these movies that I want to see. I saw another movie. Anyway, I don't think I've seen it. So I'm putting it on my list of movies to watch. All right, cool. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. We're about $100 short, $90 short. If somebody wants to chip in and get us to the $600 goal, that'd be terrific. I'd appreciate that because I don't know how many shows I'm going to do until the end of March, and I go month by month on these things. All right, Dunks says he's going to send me super chat with Fuentes' argument next show. Perfect. Perfect, and I will address them one by one. What did I want to say? Oh, if I skipped your super chat, Mitch. Oh, is this the 2 Y chromosomes? I was just going to say, so Mitch says, my wife has two Y chromosomes. I didn't think that was a question. Um, I would say, all right, today, with gay marriage and everything else, the way the term wife is used, wife and husband is used, she could have two Y chromosomes. I don't know. Um, McMuffin, I will try to repeat the questions. Yes. Uh, I will talk about the inability of a Supreme Court judge to identify what a woman is um, next time. Next show. I wanted to make that a topic, but these other things came up. Um, Mitch has marital problems. He says his wife has two Y chromosomes and she's a pig, so uh, he's definitely got marital problems. All right, good night, everybody. Tomorrow I'm at University of Sussex, probably until late. The next day I'm at Exeter University, and I think at Exeter University there might be some demonstrations, or there might be something going on. We'll see at the University of Exeter. People have complained about me coming over. People have complained about my presence there, and then the following day on Thursday I'll be speaking at Bristol University. So I'm looking forward to some talks at all these cities, at all these universities, and I'm hoping that everybody tapes it. I'm not even sure that they'll be able to do that, but I'm hoping everybody tapes it. All right, everybody, have a great night. Bye. One, two, three.